Hello my spider friends. We're going to talk about Loki, the TV series that's on Disney+. Watched the first episode last night. Very excited to watch because I'm a huge fan of Loki, the character. So these are my thoughts on the series thus far. Even though we're only one episode in, you would think I don't have that much to say, but I do. First of all, what was with the 10 minutes of flashbacks to previous movies? Like, Avengers was like the biggest movie of 2012. Everyone saw it. We really didn't need like a massive recap on the events that happened in that movie. Also, we didn't need the recap on... My cat's just knocked something over. We didn't need the recap on like what happened in the Thor movies, because this is a Loki series. Why on earth would we be watching this if we didn't want to watch Loki? Like, if we didn't know who Loki was? Clearly, we would know that. They didn't do this in Winter Soldier. They didn't do this in WandaVision. They didn't do like the whole like 10 minutes of flashbacks in those shows. So why do it on Loki? That sort of was like, well, this is a waste of my time, which I do not appreciate. So they're very heavily in at least design aesthetic, if not plot, borrowed from Loki, Agent of Asgard, which was a comic run a few years ago, which was really funny. And I think that they've borrowed the plot a little bit from Agent of Asgard to do this short. So, like, first of all, I mean, obviously, spoilers. In the scene in the church, and it's like, oh, there's the picture of the horned guy. I just sort of turned to my friend and went, well, obviously, it's Loki. It's not going to be Mephisto. It's going to be Loki. I know this to be true. He's got the horns. You know, it makes sense for it to be Loki. So that wasn't a surprise when at the end of the episode, Owen Wilson's like, oh, well, actually, the guy we're hunting is you. Is it though? Is it though? So I have a lot to unpack. And we're gonna do this in rough order of the things what come into my brain. So one thing that struck me was the little like edutainment cartoon about there are no multiverses. No. There's only the sacred timeline and the three titans. I mean, the three time guys who are so not titans are in control of this sacred timeline, and they squash any variant. Now, if you're familiar with Marvel Comics, you know that the multiverse is a huge part of the 616, and also that the next Doctor Strange movie is called the Multiverse of Madness. So I think what this is establishing is, prior to this point, there wasn't a multiverse in the MCU, which is Earth 199999. It's instead of Earth 616, like the main continuity is in the comics. So, and then by the end of this show, I think that this will be Loki re-establishing the multiverse in the MCU and getting rid of this whole sacred timeline thing. And the reason that I think that the Titans, it's just because they look like Titans, and that's the kind of stuff that Titans would probably get up to, knowing like other Titans, such as Thanos. Now, one thing that also like really annoyed me was the blatant DB Cooper scene, where Loki with the short hair is like, I'm DB Cooper, I'm going to jump out of a plane and get this money. And then I had to explain to my friend who DB Cooper was, because I'm like a true crime, I'm passionate on true crime, and like I watch a lot of documentaries, so like I knew all about DB Cooper, but my friend didn't. And if you don't, Just to very, very briefly summarise, there was a man who claimed to be called Dan Cooper. It was probably a fake name. This somehow got translated to DB Cooper through bad journalism. And he basically, he got a load of money, he hijacked a plane and jumped out with a parachute, and he was never seen again, and neither was the money. Some of it was recovered in like the woods where he jumped out, but they've never found like DB Cooper or the money. And that's who they were like, oh, it's Loki. And the thing is, the trailer for Loki showed a lot of clips from that little like 2-3 minute sequence. So seeing as how it had absolutely no bearing on the plot, it shows that they only filmed it for the trailer, like so that they could sort of mention Thor and Heimdall in new footage and maybe imply, oh, they might show up. They're not going to show up. They're not going to show up, okay? So yeah, that really annoyed me that they'd done this one little original bit of footage and that was it, and everything else was flashbacks. Like, I don't know why they couldn't have like got Tom Hiddleston to record like new flashbacks that we'd never seen before. Like, why wouldn't you just do that? You've got the guy there. I'm sure you could borrow the volume from the Mandalorian set. Like, I'm sure that they wouldn't mind. Like, you know, Jon Favreau's in charge and he did Iron Man, you know, like, come on guys, just share and share alike. So that did slightly annoy me, this whole like DB Cooper thing, because it was so obvious that it was just made for the trailer. Now, other stuff that was in the trailer was in the first episode, apart from the Loki, like, President Loki thing, which I'll come back to. I felt like that even though, like, Tom Hiddleston is an executive producer on the show, like, the guys writing it just don't know the character that well. And like they're not that as familiar with like the history and stuff, because the whole like, I don't like killing people. Yes you do. Yes you do like killing people. That's your favourite thing to do. We've all seen you enjoying killing people. That's like your favourite hobby. You just enjoy stabbing people as well. So the whole like, no, we're just going to turn him into an anti-hero. Like, I don't really like killing people. It's a thing that evil and weak people do to lash out. No! No, no, no. Loki is not a weak character. Direct quote from the comics, Loki could turn a cloud into a dragon if he wanted to. He's so ridiculously powerful in the comics. Like, they've really, really toned him down for the MCU to the point of, that's kind of stupid, why would you do that? So, going back to the Agent of Asgard thing and the clip from the trailer with the presidential Loki, the helm that he's wearing in that clip and in my thumbnail is directly from Agent of Asgard. Now, let me just briefly tell you about that comic, and I don't want to go too spoilery because I actually think that you should go read it because it's a lot of fun. But there are multiple Lokis in that comic. Now, at one point, you see, Loki's died a lot, but it doesn't last very long. And at one point, Loki died and was resurrected and became Kid Loki. And then Agent of Asgard is Kid Loki grown up into sort of young, hot, like 22-year-old Loki. And he's like doing missions for his mum. And he keeps encountering old Loki. It's like, so you assume that it's the Loki from before Loki was killed. But in a twist, it turns out that this is actually a future Loki. The Loki that we are interacting with becomes this Loki. Also, at another point, female Loki turns up. So there's at least 3 different Lokis in the Agent of Asgard thing, and I'm not going to tell you any more about it because it's a great comic and you should definitely read it. Anyway, with the Loki that appears at the end with the TVA and like dropping of the lamp and like burning all the TVA agents, this tells us a couple of clear things. One, this is not going to be Loki Prime, who we are going to see. This is going to be a different iteration of Loki. Could be old Loki, could be female Loki, could be a completely different Loki, but it's not going to be the same Loki that we're familiar with, because they were hiding Loki. And listen to me, this is very important. The only reason to hide something from the audience, such as a character's face, is to keep it from the audience, because the audience already knows who that person is, and it's going to be a big shock reveal. If it was a different iteration of Loki we've never seen before, excuse me, which I suspect it is, that's why they've like covered the Loki in like a cloak, and there was no face revealed, and all that jazz. So it's going to be a Loki, but it's not going to be the Loki that we know. Also, whoever this Loki is has had previous dealings with the TVA, and they have pissed him off, because like Loki is not the god of mischief in Norse mythology. Loki is the god of lies, chaos, and fire. So when Loki gets really, really angry, he kills things with fire. That's his thing. It's like Thor's also like the god of fertility. So whoever this Loki is, the TVA have pissed them off to the point of they're burning them alive. That's not a good thing. Also, we were wondering that there may be a predestination paradox created, because could this be a future Loki that's developed from the Loki that the TVA have pulled out of the Tesseract timeline? And don't get me started on the timeline. Actually, we're going to end up covering this crap. So yeah. This Loki could be like a future old Loki who's already gone through all this crap with the TVA, and the TVA have really significantly pissed him off to the point that they're just going around killing the TVA. They're going around, they're getting the TVA's attention, the TVA turn up, and then they kill them. Doesn't explain a few things, but I think it generally, we can assume that that is what's happening. Now the timeline. So the idea is like that they take Loki out of the timeline because he travelled with the Tesseract, and then they nip that timeline in the bud because that's not supposed to happen. But if that's not supposed to happen, then Loki's not supposed to escape with the Tesseract, which means that the Tesseract doesn't go with Loki, which means that it would stay there and Tony would pick him up, and they would have no reason to go back in time to get the Tesseract from the different time period where Tony would meet up with his dad and call himself like Dr. Potts and all of that. They would just have the Tesseract and go, and then there would be no reason for Steve to return to the timeline to return the Tesseract to the correct period of time and then grow old with Peggy. So if Steve grows old with Peggy, that's a direct result of Loki stealing the Tesseract and them having to go back to the different time period. So why isn't Steve and Tony like variations? Well, the answer is they're not variations, and they've sort of, this is a bit, it can be one of two things. It can either be that writers shouldn't mess around with time travel because it's difficult to explain, or this is a direct, like, we are trying to take Loki from an earlier point in the timeline and calling him a variant so that we can deal with this other Loki that we've pissed off. So that could be a thing. Also, the whole like we put the collar on Loki and then his magic doesn't work, and then Loki's magic doesn't work within this place. There was a much better way of explaining that didn't involve the stupid collar, which is that Loki channels his magic. His magic is directly channeled through Yggdrasil, the world tree, which spreads through the 9 realms. And they've had things before where like they've been so far removed from Yggdrasil that his magic stopped working because it no longer has that connection. So really, I think that's what they should have gone with, is that the TVA exists outside of the 9 realms, and that's why Loki's magic doesn't particularly work there. But I've got the feeling that they've made a rod for their own back with the whole like no magic thing, because that's his whole shtick. So thoughts for the ongoing series. Loki recruited by the TVA to hunt down other Loki. He's not going to want to do that. Other Loki will turn out to be a future Loki or a different variation of Loki, like female Loki. And probably, this is my theory, the 3 Titans, I mean the 3 time guys, are forcing this whole sacred timeline thing because it allows them to hold on to power, and the actual point will be that Loki is there to destroy that and restore the multiverse into the MCU, and this is perhaps what old/lady/ who knows Loki is trying to do, and our Loki is going to end up teaming up with that and helping. Those are my thoughts on the Loki series, and that's what I think.